long-term plan after council deliberation for everyone involved in this audit. This year's long-term plan process has been particularly challenging due to a number of evolving factors such as water reform and the new updated GPS released by the new government. We're really grateful to the staff for the way they constructively work with the audit team to provide information, respond to the queries and make improvements to the long-term plan that we requested. We would like to thank you, management, for their professionalism and assistance throughout the audit on behalf of our audit team, especially to Greg and his team. Nicole was involved in the CDC, and now she's on maternity leave, and also Jeff and all the other management involved in the process. Thank you. Open for questions.
Awesome. Thank you for the report. And just firstly, thank you for the feedback. I'm sure that will be passed back on to staff in terms of your appreciation to how things flow. We've got 3 questions so far from Mayor Gordon, Councillor Williams, then Councillor Fulton.
Firstly, just to acknowledge you, Yvonne, we always appreciate the way in which you work with our council, and that you're open to hearing good explanations from us around our budget, which we realise is ambitious and rightly so for our community. I realise you've just made a number of points around the Eastern Link and other projects, and I did, following the last process, raise this with James Cagle, who's the Relationships Director for NZTA, and in particular our need to have these in the budget. If not, we're not eligible to actually apply for that. So I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but there is a particular provision under the Land Transport Management Act, which I'm happy to share with you, section 16, subparagraph 4. It says an organisation may only propose an activity for inclusion in the regional land transport plan, and if we don't have that in it, then we're ineligible for it to be considered. Just wondered if you're aware of that. You are?
Yeah.
So,
we're aware of that.
So I realise the expense. So with what we're saying there, you've got that raised and it's put in context. So we're not. My understanding is you're not considering that as material. Is that correct? Where you're talking about the Eastern Link and the uncertainty of funding, we know that. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's not becoming and I'm just being clear that it's not being noted in our audit opinion as a qualified matter, is it correct?
No, it is only an emphasis of matter due to the high level of uncertainty whether or not the funding will come through. Do
you think it might be worth, I don't know how it's been proposed to be referenced, but the fact that we've got to have it in the land, because of the Land Transport Act, we've got to have it in our budget, and if we don't, we're not eligible to apply.
We're not referring to whether you apply or not. What our opinion is based on is to assess the appropriateness and reasonableness of the funding assumption, and we assess the relevant supporting information to confirm the level of certainty in relation to the assumption. At this stage, it is totally understandable for all the new projects you will have to put into the budget first, and then you apply through NZTA normal new project process. The issue we have in terms of level of uncertainty is we cannot get any firm or the evidence to support that. We do not qualify this funding assumption. What we propose to do is to highlight the high level of uncertainty around that funding assumption.
That's fine.
So, just to assure the Audit and Risk Committee, this is not a new matter. It comes up every time when you have a significant capital project that's subject to NZTA funding. It's because the funding is not confirmed basically until about October this year. This budget is always going to be a moving target. And you can see the $4 million there, that's just hot off the press last week, where we didn't receive the full allocation of funding that we applied for, so there's the rationale to leave that where it is because we've still got to go through another funding round in the October period, which may either put additional budget in or leave it where it is. So that 4 million is over 3 years.
Yes, so that's the 4 million for
it's not
3
over
years.
1 year. And therefore, once again, that's identified as it's not a it's an uncorrected misstatement, but the ability to get that readjusted, there's no time for that. It was always going to be an issue for us. The intention was to bring back a report to council in a workshop just to explain where those movements are and put a revised budget that the council can actually put in place. We'll have to go through the same exercise again when we get to October to see what allocation we can provide then. So it's the rolling account this year is always going to be a moving target.
So thank you, Mr. Vold, for your clarification here as well, because you mentioned before, Yvonne, that you were still, there was one matter, and I just didn't quite pick up what it was, there was still one matter that you were considering whether it was something based on the information we provided, that you were going to take some further reflection on that advice. Was that the point Mr. Millwood's just made?
Oh, yes. So that's in relation to the third column here, the capex durability. We the review is still underway and subject to OAG's hot review on that. The main reason is the carryover from 2024 being added into 2025, which is the first year of long-term plan post the CD stage. The number is approximately 27 million, which is significant to our long-term plan order materiality. At this stage, I do not think there is an implication on audit opinion, but that's subject to internal quality and OAG review on that. So, as I said, it may or may not result in an emphasis of matter in the audit opinion. I will be able to give Greg an update next Wednesday.
Thank you.
Just to respond to that, there was a report done to council prior to the adoption of the acceptance when we did the deliberations, which covered the doability of the capital program in terms of resourcing. So I'm pretty confident that won't end up in a tag to the account.
Council.
Yes, Audit New Zealand. So how thorough are you guys with, I know it's only a snapshot, but in the long-term plan there was a mistake of over $7 million on staff salaries and wages. How come Audit New Zealand haven't picked that up when members of the public, several members of the public have read it and picked it up to council, but flew over the heads of Audit New Zealand?
Councillor Williams, I may be mistaken, but I believe that we resolved this last audit and risk committee.
No, it hasn't been.
Well, it has.
In terms of the in terms of the council accounts, I believe it's been mistaken. That's been verified.
No, sorry, it hasn't been here, and I'll do an explanation.
With respect, it's your decision, Mr. Chair.
Everyone's happy to comment towards that.
Yeah, I'm happy to respond to you. As far as I understand, the misstatement you refer to is the difference between the 2024 annual plan and the first year of long-term plan figure that included in the long-term plan document. So we do not have the annual plan within our scope. Every year, the council's annual plan is out of Office of Audit General's mandate. We do not have a say on the council's annual plan, any figures in relation to that. I think when you see the final long-term plan, you will see a footnote that management has added to their page to explain the variance of 4 million that due to a calculation error in relation to the annual plan 2024. We do not audit any information in relation to the annual plan.
So supplementary to that, in the long-term plan it says allowance for 23 new staff, and the CD2, they're going to say it's only 9 staff, but the actual value of money left in there is the amount for 23 new staff. And also there's a $1.2 million variation there left over as well. So how's that accounted for?
As I said, we do not audit the details of the annual plan, so I can't comment on that.
Councillor Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Yvonne. I recall perhaps that when you last came to us, maybe it was the February meeting, we had quite a discussion about our Three Waters assets, about the benchmarking or rating of our chlorination, our UV, our systems. And I think we had a discussion, Mr. Chair, about whether there was some concern at the time about this reflected badly on our capability or where we're at with our assets. Some months have passed. Where are we at with now? Are you able to actually give us a revised and refreshed assessment of their standards and how well our three water systems are performing?
I think that will be part of our annual audit 2024 when we assess the performance measures in relation to any water supply, water quality. Then at that time we will be able to comment on it.
And the second question, much broader, touching on the audit fees, in the summary document you've talked about an agreed audit fee. Would you typically provide a detailed sort of breakdown of your hours and how much the fee would actually how do we benchmark this against industry standards about what the typical hourly rate is, about the services we're provided? How can we have the assurance that that's a fair and reasonable fee?
So for the audit fee process, every 3 years the Office of General will run a moderation process. For our Waimakariri District Council, we have agreed audit fee last year for the following 3 years. So the audit proposal letter was presented to the Audit Risk Committee last year, including 2023 until, sorry, I just think about the years, 2023 to 2025. So that's the 3-year audit fee has been agreed last year. And in that letter, if you refer back, that actually has included all our audit hours and details around how we build up the audit fee. Dear.
Any more questions?
Yeah, we've got Councillor Raymond afterwards. So
Thank you. Thank you, Bernard. Just with that, do you believe that we were one of the first to have gone through this audit process? Has this added extra complexity and hours to the amount of time that you have to spend with us in the accrual of fees? Would it have been a quicker exercise if we'd gone later?
Oh, sorry, you talk about the long-term plan fee. Sorry, I completely misunderstood. I was talking about the annual audit fee. Yeah. So the long-term plan audit fee was agreed in December, and yes, you are right. I think we talk about there with management. You guys have been the first sort of up of the game, especially at the CD stage when there was a period of hectic when a lot of other council decided not to take CD audited, and you are one of the council opt in for CD audit and also opt for a very early stage for adoption, one of the first few in the country. And also at this moment, you are also one of the first few finished field work for the long-term plan. And I definitely acknowledge a lot of learning for our team through the process, being the first one, and Waimakariri District Council's reports or the other document that we prepared become an example or precedent, especially the emphasis of matter that we talk about here for Eastern Link Road and School Bridge become the precedent for the rest of the council, make everyone else's life easier. I do acknowledge that in fee analysis In the report there, I report for the CD stage, we will do the fee analysis and overrun analysis and discuss that with management at first instance once we finish the long-term plan audit.
Thank you. Sorry about any confusion with my question.
Yeah, sorry, I was confused.
Just mindful we have David Walker on, so we'll go to Councillor Regan for final questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for coming along, everyone. Couple of questions. Firstly, and you probably don't have this on page 93 in our diligent, you refer to completeness and valuation of vested assets and say that we've had a history of errors. I just wondered if you could explain the background to that, because it looks like it's one of your focus areas this time.
Yeah, just bring out the page. It's so completeness of and variation of vested assets. There have been possibly since I took over Waimakariri District Council Audit since 2021. We have identified quite a few misstatements in relation to that area. Completeness, either there's a cut-off issue that that the council should include the vested asset into the certain financial year, or the variation of the vested asset. In saying that, there's a bit of background. Vested asset should be recognised at fair value at recognition. The unit rates that the council use may not align with the recent variation. However, in saying that, all these statements from memory are not material, but management will be able to accept and adjust in the accounts. From a memory, there are only a few that we left uncorrected misstatement. But still, due to the number of errors that happen along the way, and we keep this as an area of focus. Just to add, I don't think it's an uncommon issue across the sector. Just the nature of vested assets that some of them are pretty complex and a quite long process to get through finance team to actually recognise the asset on the book because it's non-cash.
So is the issue really identifying the assets,
yeah,
or the value?
Both of them. To be more.
We're a growth council, so it makes it even more complex. But the issue arises where we're trying to extract the schedule of assets as much from the developers as much as we can. And sometimes those schedules don't come into it's too late, sometimes after the audit has started. So there's placeholders in that held in their current values and so forth, and even at that stage some of the assets are still not verified. We've gone to lengths to document the process through pro-mapping processes. We've also tried to coordinate the finance team with the project delivery unit that really responsible for collating all the information together, getting it into the asset management system. So the placeholder sometimes is still there. There's cut-off dates. If you look at some of the reserves that get pushed across, sometimes there's dates where they will finish it on the 29th, but we don't really get the invoicing and so forth until the next financial year, and there's some crossover. There's a lot of checkpoints put in place and it gets involved sometimes. Is it material? No, it's not generally material, because what we're dealing with is tail ends of things which really only affect depreciation at the end of the day. And so you're using a percentage, which is quite narrow. But we've been putting hours and hours to try and correct that. And I would say that we're never ever going to get 100% in my view, because you're reliant on so many parties to get the information across to the council sometimes. And it's construction. If it's partway through its construction, there's an assessment on that, what you can actually capitalise and what you can't. It becomes quite subjective, and you don't really know what the final value is until you do the complete audit at the end. So there's lots of moving parts.
Thank you. My second question, Yvonne, relates to material measures and a couple of examples were water supply, customer satisfaction. You've got drinking water clarity, drinking water taste, drinking water odour. How do you get that information, bearing in mind we're obliged to chlorinate our water supply, which a lot of residents, of course, aren't overly happy with. So A, how do you do that? And B, I notice you've added under roading the average quality of ride on a sealed local road network measured by smooth travel exposure. How on earth do you get that data or work it out?
To respond to this question, firstly, the council and management staff are responsible to report on the performance measure under your service performance framework. So these are the mandatory performance measures required by EIA, and the council actually has a system to report on these performance measures. We have already done this part of work, and we understand the processing systems are robust. We have not found any significant issues on it, and during our final audit, we will assess the data provided by management which support the performance measure that report on the annual report. For example, just to explain one of them, perhaps the percentage of the sealed local roading network. So the road asset quality renewal of asset, the particular target is the percentage of the sealed local road network that is resurfaced, and there's a certain percentage that the council has set up for as a target, and at final will be given the actual percentage provided by management and along with all the supporting information. As far as I know, it's being documented in the RAM system. The roading team is managing these data, and they also engage their contractor to measure the length of the sealed local road every year, along with the roading renewal and the maintenance work to be able to support the data. But we have not audited this performance measure in particular in the past, so we will report if any issue that at the time we complete any audit.
It's probably an easy one to check because it's subjective.
Yeah.
But the quality of ride is a fairly subjective assessment. And maybe I'm asking the wrong person, but I just wondered how you can assess that. Whether we self-assess or not, I'm not sure.
Sorry, what is
That's under road condition.
road condition?
Under material measures.
Yeah, I may not be the expert to answer that. For our audit perspective, we assess the appropriateness of the supporting information. As far as I know, this was performed by 2 independent experts that the council engaged. For the smooth travel exposure was a quite complicated formula determined by DIA, and it's embedded in the RAM system. There are 2 inputs feeding into that performance measure. One is the traffic count, one is the smoothness survey. Both of them were performed by the third-party independent expert. So we rely on their expertise to support this performance measure.
Right. Thank you very much.
Just mindful of time to look at calling here, so thank you very much for your report. We've got a motion on the table to get something. Councillor Fulton. We have a mover and a seconder.
Just speak to this briefly. Firstly, as I prefaced my questions before, to acknowledge Audit New Zealand and the work that we do, and we very much appreciate the relationship that we have. And it is a robust relationship, and that your job is to make sure that what we are presenting is correct. And I enjoy the fact that we do have those discussions, and that leads to the presentation you have here today. And oftentimes those things are found very helpful. So any reflection to suggest otherwise by other elected members is not a reflection that is widely shared by this council. There are others trying to allege conspiracies in this, and there is not in some of statements or otherwise there. I believe our staff have done their very best to correct, and it's a very complex business we run here. There are times when things get missed, and that's what an audit's all about, and going back through and checking those to make sure that the statements presented are correct. So any suggestion or inference otherwise here is not one that is broadly shared. I think from our side of things, I was at the board, I'm on the National Council of LGNZ, and yesterday we're going through where other councils are sitting relative to ours, and I have to say I'm very proud of what our team do here. We are one of the first, so we are the guinea pig, so to speak. But it's also a benefit to us in that we get out and get in front of our community and have our audits adopted early. Some with going later doesn't always help because there's capacity issues, and a number of councils do then lament the fact that they're not in that position. So I wouldn't want to change that relative position in the order and how we do things there. But I think they're good questions in which to ask. You rightly raised the uncertainty over NZTA. We have this every year, it's not a new or every 3 years. We wish that their funding processes would better align with their own, and in fact we have talked and discussed this with the Minister, who is talking about a 10-year program. And so that in itself will assist in providing that clarity, but the wins for us, well, the $600 million just been announced of that order for William Bypass, which is major. The programs we've got there, I'm pleased that we have that program there of the Eastern Link and the Ski Bridge, because we need those to manage the effects of growth in the district, and the public have backed us putting it there. Notwithstanding, that's a funding partnership that we hope to secure, and we will go into overdrive to make sure that the Minister and others are well aware. In fact, the Minister is due to visit our council. There is a document being prepared, Yvonne, which I'll make sure you get a copy of, which actually tells the story of all the work that we've got going on, which leads to managing the effects of growth, and how integral all those pieces are, including the Eastern Link, the Ski Bridge, 5 crossroads at Tuahiwi and the bypass. It's all part of a story that we have been putting together, and we are going to go hard and lobby for it because we need these to manage those effects. Notwithstanding that, there are other things that we do also, but they are a fairly major piece if we're to manage not only the effects of growth, but congestion and other issues that our public and road safety, the other things that are raised. So all in all, I just want to again acknowledge and thank Greg, Jeff and the team for all that they do, and also again just to acknowledge our thanks to you, Yvonne, and if you could extend our thanks to your team for the work that they do.
Thank you. Councillor Fulton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to would say that we should not be afraid of scrutiny, of independent peer review, not afraid of questions about our own performance. This is precisely what Audit New Zealand does, what the Office of the Auditor General does, and other bodies. And so, there's nothing but sunlight for bringing these things forward. Just because there are errors doesn't mean there's deception. just because they're in the States, it doesn't mean, as the Mayor alluded to, it's a conspiracy. I think that it's a rigorous process, and I really appreciate your candour and answering these questions, a variety of questions that we've heard here today and previously. So it seems like a good relationship. So well done to you, and thanks to our staff and Jeff and the team, and I'm happy to endorse this report. Thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Yes, thank you for this report. I am a wee bit dismayed that there's comments made about conspiracy theories. I do believe it's up to if there's mistakes made and it still haven't been rectified. It's part of the council's duty, sitting on this committee, to raise these matters. And the matter I raised, I still haven't been resolved properly because there's facts and figures that don't tally and still don't tally. So I get dismayed when somebody disagrees with the Mayor. It's a conspiracy theory.
Point of order, then reflections. Point of order. Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I'm not going to have a personal reflection against me personally at this stage. I've never made such a comment, and so I'd ask that you direct the member to desist from that, please.
Councillor Williams, would you please desist from the previous comment just made?
With respect, Mr. Chair, the opening statement was saying there's conspiracy theories going around on here on this audit and this thing, particularly on today, on the question I asked. So I was actually referring to that here, which was directly directed at myself, because I was the one that actually asked that question,
Yes,
and I have got concern on that. So, but anyway,
to be fair, Mr. Councillor Williams, I don't believe there was any names or identification made to that statement.
it was implied towards myself. That's the way I took it.
That's the way that you took it, sir.
And I believe that's the way everybody in this room took it as well. But anyway, I'd just like to thank you for the audit report, and hopefully we'll carry on in a good way. Thank you.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Yvonne, for all the work that you do for us, and I know that when you come and look after us first up, and I'm very proud of the work that our team do and the way they look after us. And as is my portfolio, I'm very happy to be part of a very successful council. And so thank you to you and your team for the work that you do supporting us and giving us, critiquing our systems and making sure that everything's tweaked and a little squeaky clean. So thank you.
Any further speakers? Councillor Williams.
Just briefly, Mr. Chair. Yes, thank you, Yvonne, for your report. I think one of the things that is not widely understood is that your audit report is more than just numbers. It's material measures. It covers a whole range of activities that the man in the street wouldn't think would be covered by an audit. They think just if the figures balance, we get a tick. But one of the things that I've learned since I've been here is that's not the case. There's far more involved. And it's interesting how you manage to pinpoint things that we wonder about ourselves, and from an outsider you come along and hone in on them. So it keeps us on our toes, and I've certainly got some points to go back and talk to my roading department about. Some of the questions I asked you, I think I should have directed and will direct to the roading staff. So it is a big area of work, and you need to understand the whole organisation to come up with your report. So I think we have a good working relationship with you and Audit New Zealand. So I thank you for contributing to that relationship. Thank you.
No further speakers. Right.
No, it's not being exercised, thank you.
Right. There's been a motion on the table. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you very much for your report. David Walker, thank you for your patience there.
No problem. Sorry, can I start?
Yes. Go ahead.
Great. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to explain too, I've been subbed in at reasonably late notice. Miles O'Connor has some COVID-related type issues, so hence my his not being here, and hence why I'm here. Now, just to get the maximum benefit from this next time period, what's your preferred amount of time to go through this next session?
15 minutes.
Sorry, 15 or 50?
15.
15. Okay, no, that's fine. Well, look, what I'm just trying to do, I'm hoping that you can see some slides there in the background, which I'll basically present to. But what I'll try and do is I'll just try and rush through those as much as I can, and just leave the floor open for questions. Obviously, it's a really interesting time in terms of what's going on in relation to the broader economy. And obviously, there's a lot of issues relating to the local authority sector. Obviously, water is one of those key things as well. So what I'll try and do is just run through things as quickly as I can and just leave the door open at the end for any questions. Does that sound fair enough?
Yep, sounds good.
Great. Okay, great. Okay, so firstly, I just want to make sure that I haven't got any technologies issues. Can you see a graph there, the US 10-year bond versus New Zealand 10-year bond on the screen?
Yep.
Oh, great. Okay. Hey, look, the purpose for this graph here, and I think it's one of Miles's favourites, it basically just shows you that what happens in the US matters. So our long-term rates are basically driven by what's happening in terms of the longer-term US rates, and you can see the correlation there is for those mathematically inclined, the correlation is actually very, very good. So again, that's interesting. So in terms of from an advisory point of view, probably 70% of our time is sort of focused in terms of what's happening in the key US economy, which is sort of the benchmark rate for all long-term rates globally, and the balance in terms of what's happening here in New Zealand. But a quick comment on New Zealand. So you're probably well aware that New Zealand's just going through an extremely painful reset. The economic data that we're seeing is consistently poor, or grim is basically a word that would use it, and it's coming in poorer or grimmer than most economists had expected. The few bright spots are basically tourism, and arguably some sections of the dairy community. But barring that, it's a very tough economic environment. And one of the lines that I've heard recently rolled out by numerous people is the line which is referred to as survive until 25. So there's a general acknowledgement that 2024 is going to be a very tough year, and will likely get tougher as the unemployment numbers increase. But there's a general hope that 2025 will be a better one. Right, next graph here. I think I'll talk to that rather refer directly to it. So I think the encouraging signs are that last week we had the Bank of Canada. They cut their benchmark, or they cut their cash rate 25 basis points. The European Central Bank basically cut their cash rate as well last week. So we're hoping that's going to be the start of a global sort of trend to cutting interest rates. Though we do point out that countries like the US, Australia and ourselves do have more of a stubborn inflation sort of situation, but we think that's more likely to be a timing issue rather than a case of if it does happen. So it's more timing rather than if. Just to reinforce that, again, that's a graph just basically saying global inflation numbers, again, declining. I think a key point here, and I think it's really interesting from a New Zealand perspective, is that we're not actually sure what the Reserve Bank is trying to achieve. We know their inflation target is 1 to 3%, but within that they target 2%. So the debate is, will they feel comfortable to basically start cutting rates when inflation gets below 3, which most people are predicting to be at the end of this year or early next year, or will there be more hardline and wait until they've got greater confidence that we'll hit an inflation number of 2%. Next graph, again, just showing what's happening in terms of New Zealand rates. and just points out that top line there. You know, our 90-day rates have basically been unchanged now for quite a considerable period. So just reinforcing sort of the pain that the economy is going through at the moment, which is basically induced by the Reserve Bank to sort out its inflation issues. And again, it is quite a remarkable reminder to think where we were in 2020 versus where we are now. Next graph, consumer confidence. I think I used the word grim before, just showing that consumer confidence, and this is obviously at the retail level, is basically at levels not since the GFC. So just outlining how grim the New Zealand economy is going, particularly in terms of the retail space. Okay, this is what we refer to as the forward start grid or forward start matrix. This is what we look at to try and identify where the value is for our clients in terms of trying to target interest rates. So at the moment, there's a number there, 406 on the left-hand side. So that's a 1-year swap starting in 3 years' time. So that's an example of where we're trying to, you know, things that we look at or elements that we look at in terms of trying to create structures for your council in terms of that meets your requirements in terms of its treasury policy, but in terms of trying to achieve numbers that make longer term sense for, you know, your council and obviously your ratepayers as well. I'm just going to move to RBNZ projections there. Now, this should be of no surprise, but it is encouraging in terms of what the Reserve Bank is continuing to project in terms of interest rates. So the column there on the right-hand side basically shows that rates relatively stable and then falling quite quickly through, particularly through 26 and 27, and they've got a terminal rate there of 3% in terms of that cash rate. I'm personally a little bit sceptical on that. I prefer a number of 3.5% rather than 3%, but that is where they are projecting things at the moment. Next graph here. The purpose of this one, Miles likes to refer to this one, and essentially the key point here is if we use history as a guide, once the Reserve Bank does start to cut rates, they're generally not modest decreases in rates. Generally, the average cutting phase is around 1.75% to 2%. So that's encouraging that, you know, again, if we use history as a guide, that when the Reserve Bank does start to cut rates, the changes in the rates that we will see will be meaningful. And just getting on to the last two slides, hopefully familiar with this graph from previous presentations that Miles have done. So what I've done here is I've basically just rolled this through to 30 June 2024. And obviously that's a key sort of date in terms of measurement of a lot of financial type metrics in terms of interest rate covenants. So basically saying that as of 30 June, we'll have a small breach identified just in that circle there, which is around that sort of May, June sort of 28. So what we're proposing, which is shown on the following graph, is a new swap starting in April 28 for a 2-year term. The indicative rate at the moment is around that 4.38%, which is a sort of a reasonable number, and that would ensure that your council would remain treasury compliant, but be at a level that when interest rates fall, it should get the full benefit of those when that does occur. So from a Bancorp point of view, we're still encouraging clients to remain at the bottom end of their treasury policy requirements on a view that current interest rates are too high, and that when the falls in interest rates do come, they'll be meaningful, and hopefully you can benefit from those when that does occur. So that's my quick presentation, ladies and gentlemen. So if you've got any questions, I would welcome those.
Thank you very much for the report. We've got one question so far from Councillor Fulton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, David. Just incidentally, yesterday, you called out Stats New Zealand business employment data, They reported that total gross earnings were up 8.6% in the year to March 2024, and it seems like there's some signs that business revenue is increasing, that the economy may be sort of on a turn. What impact might that have nationally on inflation and interest rate policy if business revenue is rising like that again?
Was it business revenue or was that tax revenue?
Well, it's called business employment data. It's total gross earnings up 8.6% in the year to March 2024. That's from Stats New Zealand yesterday.
No, I didn't see that, but I did see a piece that saw, and the two the answers are kind of connected, and that was a situation where tax revenue was higher, and that was due to it related to trust, the taxation rate to trust. Look, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in it, but the changes in that basically encourage tax to be paid now rather than be paid later. But yeah, I'm in terms of your point, I'm a little bit surprised that businesses are paying more tax because, as I say, the conditions are basically pretty grim. But if we just run on the basis of what you're saying, then it would be a situation then if tax is higher, that's more money coming into the government. The government can then make a decision as to whether it repays debt or uses that money to for things like tax cuts or to pay for other services. Now, at the moment, in terms of what the government is sort of flagging or indicating, which is always has a capacity to change, it's highly likely higher revenue numbers would just mean that would go to repayment of debt quicker than what would happen otherwise.
Any further questions?
But again, just to express my surprise in terms of that number. For example, Westpac came out yesterday with their latest GDP pick, and the GDP for the next quarter they're picking to be another negative number of negative 0.2% versus the Reserve Bank's forecast of positive 0.2%. So to me, those sorts of numbers are more convincing in terms of where the real economy is going.
Just further there, I think you might have touched on it in the explanation, but when you're talking gross revenues, there is an inflationary effect in the economy which we have to deal with as well. So is that the case? So we can have as much gross revenue increase as we like, but if it's linked to inflation, then it's not necessarily a good impact.
Yeah, no, good point. And for example, ANZ, I think, came out yesterday or the day before, and they talked about an increase in retail sales volumes. And I think the number was coming in at, I think, 2 to 3%. But when you adjust that for inflation, and then when you adjust that for the population growth that's occurred in New Zealand as well, in real terms, it's actually going backwards, which is maybe the point that you're getting to.
Any further questions? No, thank you very much for that, David. Yeah, it's looking positive in the long term.
Yeah, I think so. I think. Sorry, just for me to finish, because I don't like to consider myself a pessimistic person. What's that line? Pessimist is never disappointed. But as I say, I think we're just going through a reset at the moment, and yes, it will be painful, but I think. The world operates in cycles, and I think while we're going through a bit of a painful scenario at the moment, I agree with the thoughts from a lot of people that 2025 should be hopefully a better story.
Okay. Oh, sorry, there's just one more question from the
question just worked here.
We've got Councillor Ward. Yeah, we've got Councillor Ward and then
David, thank you for coming to talk to us. So would you say that it would be really good for councils to do their planning now for capital works, and so that in 28, 29 and 30, when interest rates come down, we're ready to build and ready to go and ready to benefit from interest rates coming around, having done the planning, resource consents and everything, utilising the staff that we already have?
Oh, hey, look, that's a really good question, and someone asked me that question a couple of weeks ago. And look, at face value, that makes sense. I in short, why borrow? Why do stuff now when it's going to be, from an interest rate perspective, it's going to be more expensive than what it should be, hopefully in a couple of years' time. But something that you might find interesting, I was talking to another council who's gone out to get quotes in the last month or so, and found out that the cost for work that they thought was going to cost X is actually coming in significantly cheaper. And that's on the basis now you've got a lot of infrastructure type firms that are now scrambling around looking for business. And many of these firms are basically now doing work on the basis that they just want to do the work so they can keep their people employed. So they're willing to accept a lot lower margins than what they would have otherwise. So going back to your point, I would actually encourage you to get some pricing now. I think, obviously no promises, but potentially you might get some pleasant surprises as to what some of these firms are now prepared to do work for. And that would more than offset the any potential interest rate saving.
I concur with that, because already our tender prices, we have a lot more people tendering, and our tender prices are coming in at 2/3 of what our engineers predict could be. So we're already experiencing that, but I'm also interested in our bigger capital expenditure that takes quite a lot of planning. So thank you for that, David.
Okay, well, thank you. That reinforces what I've been hearing, so it's nice to hear.
Thank you. I just want to thank David and Miles for their advice to us. It's really important to have good, independent, professional advice around treasury management, dealing with large sums of money. And I'm glad to hear that you're a pessimist, David, because it's nice to listen to the advice of a pessimist sometimes. It's helpful. And thank you for the clear steer in relation to the treasury management swaps that we need to put in place and keeping things at a minimum level so that we can take advantage as interest rates fall. So thank you for that.
Okay, right.
Thank you for your time, David.
Okay, likewise. Thank you for your time.
Right, and now I believe we're back on track for 5.1. E&C.
So this report is largely a formality. It enables Council to approve the Enterprise and Canterbury Statement of Intent and associated business plan. You'll note that this this committee reviewed Statement of Intent and the draft business plan in March and requested no changes or updates to those documents. Since then, in May, the E&C board, which includes our Chief Executive and Mayor, reviewed and approved the Statement of Intent and business plan at their meeting. The documents, of course, consider and reflect the Enterprise and Canterbury Strategic Plan, which was built and adopted last year. It looks and considers the Waimakariri Economic Development Strategy that Council put in place alongside E&C, and also the Waimakariri Visitor Strategy, the marketing strategy. So we believe it's in good order, and it's here in front of you for adoption in time for the new financial year. Happy to take any questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Any questions? Councillor Fulton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps one for Heather Hyde. I note with interest actually by journalist David Hill that been on RNZ doing his roundup of regional activities just a few days ago, and he spoke glowingly of the Dark Skies project, the Dark Sky train. Can you give us an update as to where that is? It's obviously a key project, it's not PNC.
Yes, it definitely remains on our business plan this year. We've been involved for a couple of years helping Rail, but prior to that there was another person that we helped to actually investigate developing the Oxford Observatory further. We were unsuccessful as an organisation to get funding to employ somebody to actually progress the observatory. But in the meantime, we did provide an economic impact statement that Benji Patterson did for Enterprise with Canterbury that showed the prospects of further developing the Oxford Observatory and the dark skies. But that also enabled us when we supported the application for International Dark Skies Accreditation. That impact report has been actually used now by Hamner, Kaikoura and all of the other Canterbury councils who are looking at dark skies development. So the trust is now being formed in Oxford, the Dark Skies Trust. I'm not sure the name of it exactly, but they're actually now going to apply in their own right to get some funding to employ somebody like Raoul, hopefully it may be Raoul, to actually further progress of the Oxford Observatory, but also to be a leader in the development of a dark sky trail that all 10 councils are behind from Canterbury. We think that there's a real opportunity there to progress an astrotourism trail, because there is a lot of interest in that.
Just with that, I've noticed in that breakdown of figures, I think waimakariri estimated benefit was something like 4.5 million. So how do we come to that figure? Is that figure becoming firmer all the time? It's a hard one, isn't it?
It is a hard one. I guess that it said, I think, 24 new in jobs. So it said it was a number not pulled out of the year, but it's done on a calculation. I haven't got that report in front of me, but you would have read it and I've read it. And as I said, it's formed the basis of the rest of the councils in Canterbury actually saying, actually we think that there's a real opportunity here. So, and Benji Patterson has not just done this for Enterprise North Canterbury, he's actually done it for other councils as well. So we trust his figures.
Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you for this presentation or what have you. I believe Christchurch City Council is pulling out of their eyesight situation. Is that going to have a negative or a positive, or is that going to have any effects on the Kaikoura eyesight and you know, what's happening on that side of the equation?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Darren Rainbird, I think his name is, that also runs the Akaroa eyesight, is going to set up in the Grand, which is the centre of the square, in that brand new redeveloped, post office building, an eyesight. And it's set up in the Novotel, and then they get kicked out of there, and then they set up a tent outside just recently outside the Grand, because the Grand isn't opened yet. And so it didn't meet any of the criteria for Eyesight New Zealand, and they shut it down. So as a consequence, prior to that opening, which was over summer, the Kaikoura Eyesight is actually receiving all the calls and emails that now come to the Christchurch Eyesight. So it's had quite a big impact on our work and on our commissions. So we just did one for Australia that came through an email on Friday. It was a $3,000 itinerary for around the South Island. So we are picking up more work, but that comes at a cost to us. So I'm actually going to be approaching Christchurch NZ to pay for that service.
So the question was, it is actually positive or
negative? It is positive.
Positive.
And it will be more positive when I get a service fee out of Christchurch NZ. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're now the only eyesight in Canterbury, Kaikoura again, so we're getting a lot of calls. And there's still a lot of people that need that personal assistance. You know, it's like when you use a travel agent, when you go overseas, they'll tell you things that you wouldn't know knew was available unless you've got that independent advice.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Heather, reading your statement of intent always impresses me in terms of the levels or the numbers of goals that you are trying to achieve over a year or so. It's just amazing. So congratulations to you on your leadership and your team. In terms of my question, I was looking at your specials page and I just wanted to ask whether or not there's any checks and balances in regards to that you're offering 20% discount on Sabima hotels in Christchurch and the 2-night stay in Akaroa. Are there any checks and balances that what you're promoting in terms of the specials isn't taking away business from the actual district here?
We're also offering Coastal Pacific and train deals. And yes, you're right, they are out of the district, but they're people who live in the district that want to actually utilise those specials. So it's up to us through the eyesight network. They actually put those specials up through the eyesight network, and part of our service to provide that is to actually promote that. That is part of eyesight servicing.
Okay. So you can't actually say, no, this is going to be detrimental to our district because the ratepayers pay for it. So you actually are bound to actually promote those.
We are part of the Eyesight New Zealand. So when they're running specials, and also through TIA, the Tourism Industry Association. As you know, Brett, we haven't got a lot of hotels in this district, and bring it on. The one in South Brook and potentially Ravenswood talked about it. There was potential on the golf course of Pegasus, but nothing has transpired of yet. So, but we do actually have a lot of Airbnb, like 170 in the district. And I've heard good things from people in Amberley saying that, they've stayed there, or in Whitebread actually, I was talking to somebody at Black Estate, they said, we're looking forward to travelling through to Waimakariri district so we can stay over there. So we're actually picking up a lot of accommodation through Airbnb.
All right. Lovely. Thanks, Helen.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you and welcome, Heather. Councillor Williams asked my first question, so great minds may think alike about the eyesight. Just going on to page 36 in our system, it's item 4 in yours. I see that Waimakariri is actually doing better than Canterbury and New Zealand, both in terms of GDP, population growth, and so on. Is there any explanation you have why that is?
No, those figures are provided to me by Statistics New Zealand, and I'm very pleased because every year I've been doing this job, they've been very positive. This is a growth region. We're in a great district here. And I know that people are moving out here. I know that businesses are expanding, and we know that hospitality and retail is going to be bad this year. And I really feel for them. This is where LNC leans into business support more than ever, and there isn't any government support for those businesses as there was with COVID, as there was from earthquake relief. But businesses, good businesses, know to put away for a rainy day. They've been through this before. I think that the GDP, as I said, there's a lot of businesses doing okay. A lot of businesses are not. We've got some historical businesses here, like Rangiora Bakery, Misco Joinery. They're all doing really well with different growth in the building industry. And they're picking up work everywhere because they're very astute businesses. So we've got a lot of good historical businesses here in North Canterbury.
My second question was, on the next page, residents' mean income levels. There's no data available for Huranui and Waimakariri since 2020. What's the reason for that?
My data geek, Miles, tells me there's no data available. So it must be every 4 years or something, I would say. But I can go back and double check that. But we just updated that only a couple of weeks ago, and that was there was no data available for that.
I see in 2019 Waimakariri was doing better than Canterbury, the New Zealand average, and Huranui.
Sure.
Simon.
Look, I think Stats NZ data is being trickled out, and we'll be able to get some data on that pretty soon. And I'd like to wonder whether sometimes the larger it depends on the granular kind of approach. So Waimakariri go down to district level as opposed to Canterbury and regional level. Sometimes the data is available at a regional level, but not necessarily at a district level in the same time periods. So we can have a look at that in Stats and see if we can update that as soon as possible.
The previous presenter, David, indicated doom and gloom this year and survived to 25. But the data that you've presented in your report shows we're actually doing quite well.
That's probably up till end of last year, I would say, that data. This year, it's done a turn, complete turn. I mean, last year we were actually all doing really well. Money was, I'm not saying it's to do with the Labour and National Government, but money was flowing a lot easier with the Labour government. We were able to access a lot more funding for businesses, and with the change in government and the economy tightened, things are a bit more grimmer this year. So I'd say the numbers you're looking at would be last year, up to the end of last year. There's certainly been a turn.
When we look at the intermetrics data for the quarters in 2024, there's been a significant change in GDP, not just for us, but across the country. And I think that reflects the comments that the previous presenter made as well. So this last half year has been pretty tough.
Thank you.
Councillor Fulton.
Thank you. Heather, we've talked in previous meetings about development of sub-brands within the marketing, sort of sub-brands within the district. I think it was talking about like sort of Kaikoura, Rankura, having sort of some defining sort of logos and attributes that could attract people to different parts of the district. Have we got that work underway? Where does it fit in? Yeah.
Tim, I'm honestly not sure about that.
I think it was just signage, like the signage and promotion and logos and that sort of stuff.
I think that might be the promotions associations.
Is it? Okay, right, thank you.
Yeah, I think the promotions associations have a role in there. Of course, as you're aware, there's a review of that underway alongside those promotions associations. I think the responsibility for ESC sits around the waimakariri visitor marketing strategy. So their mandate is really to market the district to the greater New Zealand economy, I suppose, and bring people overall into our area.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Ward has indicated that she's happy to move. Would you have a second? Councillor Williams? Thank you very much. Councillor Ward.
Thank you. Thank you, Heather. Another difficult year for all of us, with restricted and constrained monies coming in to do the great work that you and your small team do, and you do a great job. And we very much value what you and your team do for us. So I guess it's just steady as she goes, and just keep doing the basics well as you do. And then hopefully very soon we'll come through this and things will start to expand and we'll be able to take off again. So anyway, thanks for all the work you do.
Councillor Williams.
No, just thanks for what you're doing and well presented report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further speakers? I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time, councillors, and like yourselves, we have the same issues, increased costs. We're going to run a very tight financial prudent year this year, and we're going to lean into, as we always do in times of distress, we'll be here for your businesses. Thank you.
Right, moving on to 5.2, risk management work program. Good morning, welcome.
Good morning.
You have the floor.
Thank you. This is our 6 monthly report to the committee regarding state of our corporate risks register. Essentially since the last time that we saw you in December, I think it was, nothing has changed. So we are moving along very nicely with the 10 identified risks that we currently have on our corporate register. Our controls are steady and our treatments are being managed appropriately. So, yeah, unless there are any questions, it's looking good.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Councillor Fulton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick one, just in the table of that risk management work program timeline. We talked about where your managers' meetings, you have to identify whether there's a risk in a particular policy or issue. I see that's an ongoing project. What's the delay in doing that? I imagine that the council is very aware of what the risks are. So is there some sort of a difficulty in joining that up, when making staff aware of the risks when they come to this meeting?
I hope I'm interpreting your question
Yeah.
correctly. So the work program is a 3-year work program. So we started end 2022 and we will be finished end of 2025, everything going accordingly. But basically,
I suppose I'm asking how do you identify those risks? Maybe it's like for the chief, is it a flag on a report, or is it a report that, hey, heads up, this is the major? How do we identify these risks?
Sure. So obviously our identification of the risks themselves are occurring with management teams. So we regularly review the register with them monthly, and we have our 6 monthly full review of the register, which is occurring next month. As part of our reporting to management team, we flag anything that we think is an emerging risk. That's based on us doing our own analysis of what's going on out there in the world, but also obviously, our conversations with management team are extremely productive and good conversations around what is going on in the space. In terms of what else could be elevated to the corporate risks register, should we identify any risks that are, significant in other areas of the business on our other operational unit risk registers, we would highlight that to the management team for their consideration and input.
Just the 3-year work program is looking at, so at the moment we've got about 600 risks right through our database, and they're managed by each unit. And the 3-year program is to actually review their whole risk register and go through each unit and reassess whether these risks are still material ones or not, and work at a proper program for them. We found with the database, I found with the database it was quite cumbersome. We had e-maps and so forth that we weren't getting any real value out of them. So that's what part of this 3-year program is to get it back to the square root, so actually managing the risks more productively than just the tick-off exercise. So we've gone through the exercise of the council to identify your risks, the management team to identify its risks. We've got both of them come together, and then underneath all those risks, we've got risks per unit that are also being monitored throughout each unit, and they will revise those on a monthly basis, reported on a quarterly basis, and then it was the top. What we've got to do is a complete overview so that we can actually see individual movements as a global, see what's happening to the risk register globally.
Yeah, I suppose it's just without getting debate about it, is that these seem to be global big picture sort of risks. But how do I identify if there was a health and safety risk at some, dilapidated pumping station, like I hope a UV plant, something that's inconsequential, but when an incident happens, it could be its way away to the top. How do you make sure?
So that unit itself has its own risks. It happens. We have a health and safety register as well, where any accidents or any issues has been monitored. So it's another individual process. One of the things we looked at the start is, and this is what started some of the conversations, is that if you look at a total risk council, what's its major risk is to a minor risk? Well, fatalities. If you look at the higher level risks, they went in a risk register for health and safety. That's catastrophic if you have a fatality. So if you look in, say, a risk for earthquakes, and you look at some of the measures for that, one would be light. And so how do you measure that across the council's normal day-to-day risks and business as usual? That's what you're identifying as. And that's the very work which we're doing now, is to rationalise that so that we can actually see the movements that are occurring rather than getting bogged down by 600 risks across the organisation.
page 42, it's got on the risk register, and it's got in a critical stage, for example, the AFA earthquake happening. So why is it critical? Haven't we learned anything from a previous earthquake situation, considering now we've got extra staff on the civil defence, we've got resilience team coming into it, so shouldn't be critical unless we haven't learned anything from previous. So I just can't figure out why it's critical when we've had some bad experiences. We've come through, we're one of the top councils coming through this type of situation, so why is it still critical?
I might 50-50 this with Chief if that's okay. I understand what you're saying, and I agree. From a general, risk perspective, the great thing about our risk register is that it keeps us obviously abreast of what is going on, but it's organic. It's moving all the time. So as we get more and more controls completed and treatments completed, and we get more and more controls in place, that critical rating may in fact decrease, and it could potentially decrease. But I might hand that over to Jeff.
I mean, it's contrary. I don't think it will decrease. The risk, there will always be probably our biggest risk for this council, and a part of the interrogation we should do to ourselves is, are we doing enough to mitigate the effects of an AFA 8 or a flood that goes through our district? And yes, we are putting a huge amount of effort into and resource into actually trying to mitigate the effects of that. And part of that program where we've got 5 teams involved in our response centre, that's one of those key ones which effectively add up as a number of controls or mitigating factors to try and reduce the effects on our community. So in other words, if we only had one response team, we couldn't really attend to that properly over 24 hours, particularly if that event went more than a few days. We'd have burnout, we wouldn't be able to respond to our community. So the management team, actually we had talked about this one, so it was this week, around criticality, and one of the questions we raised is, well, it hasn't changed, we're not doing anything different. And yes, we aren't, but it's really probing yourself all the time to whether you can get that red into an orange, and I don't think we can because of the effects of what an AFA means to us in terms of the damage, because there's a number of factors that make up that red consequence and likelihood, and the two combined, the consequence one's always going to be something in the vicinity of 30 to 40 million for our district, depending on the magnitude of the earthquake or the flood. So if we're not doing this exercise, then we wouldn't be managing those risks properly, and that's why you'll see this report coming on a 6-monthly basis. So we're always reviewing ourselves and saying to ourselves, how are we putting enough resource or too much resource? Is it in the right place? And what else can we do?
Thank you very much for that. Any further questions? Just a quick question to me. Given the old Kiwi attitude of she'll be right, from the beginning of the process to now, have you found that there's been a wee bit of a change in terms of risk culture within the council and the management team?
Yes, absolutely. I think moving away from the complexity of the system, as we go through this work program, we've kind of moved away from the complexity of the system to focus on the basics of how we do risk management. And so starting to build our staff's confidence and competence in how we do risk management, we've definitely seen an increase. I often, sit with management team to either talk about it or we do our 6-monthly reviews, and the conversation is fantastic. And the conversation that we're seeing as we're doing our workshops and collecting this data we're mitigating risks all over the place just by having the conversation. And people are walking out of these workshops going, oh my God, that was really beneficial for me, and I didn't realise we were doing this, and oh, actually, this is the real risk for us rather than what we perceived over here. So there's still a long way to go for sure, but we're on an increase in terms of our knowledge around risk management, and I think it's worth noting that there are definitely areas within this organisation that do spectacular at it. There are people that are doing it on a daily basis, whether it's project management or, you know, big scale stuff. But there are lots of people who've never even heard of a risk register before. So yeah, I think we're making good progress. We are, our work program, we're set to kind of do another risk maturity assessment first, second quarter of next year. So we'll see where we've kind of got to with that, and we'll keep on doing those to see how we are improving as we go along.
Excellent. Right, so pending no further questions, we've got a motion on the table. Do we have a mover? Councillor Fulton, seconder. Councillor Ward. Councillor Fulton.
Yes, thank you, Sharon, for the report and for the explanations across your team. I think even with your last comment, it's pretty clear that there's a cultural change that's been going on probably for a good 10 years or more. Related to bike rural, but certainly the conversations I hear outside council and in the industry are that people are voluntarily absorbing the need to keep these conversations going about risk, and it's only beneficial to organisations. So I think if you were playing some part, and you and your colleagues are carrying that across council, then we're on the right track. So yeah, happy to support this report and good work. Thank you.
Councillor.
Thank you for your work and looking after us and the team. So I'll be supporting this report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the things we deal with every day is risk here. One of the first things we learn. I was inclined to agree with Councillor Williams when he asked about AF8, for example. I thought that if we my question to myself is, can we mitigate risk by our response? And under item 1, for example, there are a number of things set out, how we can deal with the risk response. Because otherwise we're always going to have a critical red area there that we can never address. So I think it's good to highlight that one because it is a risk, and in fact in Diligent it's a double risk because we've had Appendix 1 twice. So I think risk is something that we must remain conscious of, and as you say, talking about risk is actually managing it to a certain degree and making it known to us all. So it's a good report, but I had trouble getting to grasp, and you must get frustrated in trying to put this down on paper and articulate what the actual risks are. But it's certainly something we need to acknowledge and be aware of. Yeah, I've forgotten something.
Any further speakers? No? I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right. Making reasonably good time. 5.3 outcomes for Waimakariri District Council Health and Safety Risk.
Trina's not here, I've just messaged her, I'm not sure. Maybe go on to the cyber security.
Excellent. We'll jump here to 5.4, report cybersecurity. Thanks for your time this morning. You have the floor. Good morning.
So this is our regular reporting around cybersecurity. The report this month highlights that we have undergone a pen test recently in February, and there was no crucibles that we found this time around. There have been some highs that we've addressed internally, but nothing of any seriousness. We are progressing against our framework, largely some compliance framework. We still score quite highly compared to other councils in New Zealand. The one area that has been noted that is still quite low, there is one around service provider management. That is a new finding we introduced, or sample compliance we introduced in May last year, and we're still progressing on that. That's a governance issue that we're introducing across the council to ensure that any providers that we have, we know that they're providing secure services to us, and that we review the services as they're introduced to the council. Otherwise, one of the findings that the detect area kind of fell very slightly. That's because we're planning on introducing some new software to the organisation. Costs have gone up around that, so we're reassessing how we do that.
Thank you. Any questions for the report? Councillor Fulton.
Thank you. I just noticed in the report that talks about assessment of residual risks and inherent risks, etc. There's a couple of references to some systems that are software that's out of date or unsupported, but it's still in wide and general use. And I realise the rating is relatively low over the risk assessment, but why do we have unsupported systems? And is it, cannot they be replaced, or is that an easy exercise?
We have quite a lot of legacy software in the organisation. Some of it has support agreements in place, some of it doesn't. I think one of your particular
the Napier computing system.
That's a very historical piece of software. That was our original ERP system that contains reporting data. That has been left online primarily for reporting. The decision when that was put into that mode was that we need the data, but it wasn't necessary to import it into our new ERP system. So we're hoping that with Datacom we'll be doing something with that historical data.
Thank you. Okay. Any further questions? Councillor Lee.
Good morning. At paragraph 3.10, you've conducted an internal and external penetration test of our network in February. Could you just explain how you go about doing that and what the results were?
So we engage a company called Testwood, I think they called it. They keep on getting bought out. So Lateral Security initially, we've had a relationship with them for quite a few years. They have some very skilled cybersecurity people. We give them our the ranges of addresses for our computers and some details around what we'd like them to review. And they have the remit to go away and try to find any vulnerabilities that they can with our systems. So we do two types of attacks. We do one where they're looking at what we present to the internet generally, and then we also give them the ability to log into our network and test things as if they were plugged into our network. So that's why there's two different types. The higher risk one would be if we had something exposed on the internet. So that's why we asked them to do separate tests on that. We also review that ourselves on a regular basis. We have some tools that automatically scan to find any issues, but we'd like to have an independent assessment at least once a year on that. That one found no major issues. Internally, there were one or two historical high issues that we are working to remediate at the moment. Nothing of any huge significance, but so if they were, they'd be classified as critical and we'd obviously jump on them immediately. But anything that is there is now being put into our work plan and we're mitigating. Some of those are around things like older versions of Windows servers that we've got some services sitting on that we've asked people to update those.
Thank you. Councillor Little.
Just one question with the framework compliance score, which is really, really good compared with other councils, like a third better. Does that sort of mean if there's any council's going to get any cyber attacks around New Zealand, they'll attack the weaker councils first and leave us alone?
Difficult to answer, possibly. If you're a weaker target, then yes, they may target you first of all, or they may just hit the larger councils, the Christchurch council, because they're more significant, they've got more access to larger systems, they've got more access to government. It entirely depends. A lot of it is kind of random backscatter from things happening across the internet. We do get targeted all the time. We see attacks all the time. All the council will be seeing that. If they have got a specific vulnerability that is being published and they're not doing anything about it, then there is a chance that they would be a target.
Any further questions? Just one really quick one from me. Under your top 10 score risks, I noted number 4, DOS attacks. The inherent risk is lower than the residual risk. Do you mind explaining a wee bit around that?
I'm not entirely sure why that's happened. We do have controls in place around that. So obviously our internet provider has some mitigations in place. We have internet provision by 2 degrees. They have mitigations in place. CCL have mitigations in place, and we do question them about these. We also have backup lines, etc., to make sure that we can cope with the denial of service attack. And if necessary, we would call upon our providers to provide more capacity and help and assistance to try to mitigate DOS attacks. I'm not quite sure why that score is going down like that, but we do have controls in place around that. Obviously, the actual inherent risk from that would be that they could take down our internal and external services with the DOS attack. So it is quite a high risk, but we do have controls in place around that.
That's very comforting, thank you. With no further questions, we have a motion on the table. Do I have a mover? Councillor Williams, seconder. Councillor Ward. Councillor Williams.
Thanks for the report, thank you.
Councillor.
Just thank you for looking after us so well. Can you keep it up? I know sometimes you're looking after us so well, it takes me 3 times to get into my computer in the mornings.
Councils tend to be a little bit of a target sometimes, so you might indicate that you see some issues just because you guys are public facing.
Any further speakers? Any comments?
Thank you, Owen and Dave. One of the reasons why we score well in terms of the assessment is that we have dedicated staff on cybersecurity. Not all councils have that, but the risks involved are so significant. I think it's a very sensible thing to do. So I think we're fortunate to have the skills in the team.
Excellent. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
It's not changed, not responded to my message, so I don't know. Report.
Okay, I'm going to move a motion that we table report 5.3 for the next meeting. Councillor Ward second. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Oh, sorry, against? Carried. So we'll table 5.3. And then reporting on Lagoima. Are we able to? Will we be able to get the message?
What about 5.5 is?
We've already done all of it.
Okay.
That was the first one.
Yeah, right.
While we're waiting for Leo to. Would you mind going through your portfolio?
You caught me. I won't say it. Okie dokie, I've got 3.
Just what pays over the room, I assume
Alright,
we'll send these through
okay.
to her, won't you?
Yes, all right. Okay, well, I'll give you, here you go.
Microphone.
No, this is the communications report, and I'll send it through because.
Just your microphone.
Oh, sorry. This is the communications report from Alistair, and I'll send it through to Kay, and because there's attachments and lots of reading to do, so I'll just briefly go through through what's happening. One of the big changes to our outputs has been the rescoping of our e-news as detailed in the email below.
We're just going through report.
However, we have, they've also welcomed Marie Callan, which I mentioned last time. So she's been with us for about 6 weeks now and has hit the ground running. Northern Pegasus bylaw review, one final project to note would be the engagement program for the Northern Pegasus bylaw review. I believe you received the report on this at tomorrow's council meeting, which is today, seeking approval to engage further with changes that have been informed by the engagement practice to date. Engagement took place from 20th December to 1st of March in the form of beach users survey, as well as topic-specific engagement on the bylaw itself. We sought feedback online, promoted the engagement at beach entrances, undertook on-beach interviews and worked on a dedicated group of stakeholders to reach this point. Through these means, we received feedback from 428 residents, and I also want to add that at our last regular Airfield Advisory Group meeting, we had Sylvia from Green Space came and mentioned about the Pegasus bylaw review, and the airfield owners and operators were not aware of it. And we're very happy to do some research, and I'm sure they've sent a submission in, but I just need to point out that they are users of the northern part of the beach at below the waterline, and that their small aircraft probably have less impact on the beach than the horses do who are training on the south side below the waterline. So just put that into perspective, which will be coming to us for review and for looking at soon. Long-term plan, the team put together a narrative for the plan, the marketing communications campaign to promote this, produce video and photo assets, and arrange a series of drop-ins for residents to attend to find more information. Throughout the long-term plan engagement period, we spoke to hundreds of locals during drop-ins. We had ads throughout the district talking about the key issues, and this drove over 3,400 visits to the engagement page, which resulted in over 330 submissions, all from local people. We're also informed by previous engagements in our plans and strategies. Our process has integrity and is measured and robust. The rates newsletter, we have been putting together an insert into our rates newsletter that tells the story of the long-term plan, as well as other significant changes that are affecting ratepayers this year. This is attached and will be sent out later this month. So I'll send this on to Kay, who will distribute that to you all to read, both those things. That's from Alistair. So I will now wait. I've got a report from Marie, which maybe Tia comes first, and then one from Greg. Thank you.
Very gracious of you, Councillor. Tia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry I'm late. I was listening online, but clearly there was a delay in what I was listening to. This is the report for the 1st of March until the 31st of May. In that time, the Council received 71 official requests for information under the WAIMA, and we responded to 81. Most of the requests related to solar farms, consent use, parking fines, dogs, and also about topics in the long-term plan. The Council took an average of 13.53 days to respond to these requests, and staff spent approximately 194 hours on these requests. 2 of these requests was considered substantial and was the applicant was advised that the Council will charge for the information. One of the applicants came back and revised his request, whereafter the information was provided. The other applicant opted not to further her request. If we take into consideration the costing structure based on the Minister of Justice for charging, the Council spent approximately $8,588 in the 3 months to respond to this request. I'm happy to answer any questions if there is any, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Councillor.
A couple of questions. I'll go to the solar farm. I'll just pick this up. We got a request on the 8th of the 3rd, 24. It took 13 days to respond to that, which is fine. We got another request for the same thing, obviously, there on the 4th of the 4th, 24. Another 13 days to respond. So why does it take so long to respond to the same OAI request as we've had previously, considering we had one there earlier than that, just a couple of days before that. It only took 7 days to respond to another request. So why is there variation?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it didn't take it. The questions in the request may have differed. They may have requested, although it's the same topic, they may have requested different information. Firstly, and I know for a fact that those two, we did draft them together and we did send it out together. So the one that took, the later one, just took longer to peer review. It's not 14 days and then 14 days again, it's 14 days from the day that we received the application.
That's cool.
Sorry, just to give further explanation. The other thing too is that it's subject to 2 peer reviews. It depends on the business of the staff that's involved to do the peer review as well. So it takes a while. We do have 20 days to respond.
No, I understand that question, the answer, but there could be something different in that request. So I hadn't actually thought of it that way, so that was a good response, so really good. The second question that I have is, there's a lot seem to be, and I don't know whether they're the same people, some of the same people requesting the same information time and time again over the same situation, and I know some have gone to the Ombudsman on it. We don't know how many, but some of the people actually make a point of letting councils know. So why don't these people get the right answer in the first time when they apply, rather than have to come back to the council 5 or 6 or 7 times on it? Well, surely if we've got nothing to hide, and I shouldn't have, why does it take so many times for them to get the information out of us? Because that's, I presume, staff time involved in doing it. So why is this happening?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the right answer is in the eye of the beholder, councillor. We do provide the information that they requested. They then come back and say, but this cannot be all the information, or this is not the right information. I know that you're one of the councils that do receive the trail. If you look at the later responses, you will note that we clearly state in our later responses that that information has already been provided, or that we've already responded. The fact that they assume that there is additional information, or that they assume that that is not the correct response, doesn't make that assumption true. This is their interpretation. We can only provide the information that we have on our records, and that is the information that we provide them.
As a councillor, sometimes I get to see the answers that you do on the first request, and I can see some quite large differences of what we know and what we've been speaking about in council and what's been sent to the people. So I'm not assuming there's something wrong, although you don't tell the people, I know there's something wrong. So why isn't the facts being picked up on the first request to those people and let them know everything?
Mr. Chair, it also depends what they ask. We only provide what they ask. If you are aware of any information that we have not provided, I'm happy to look into that and then provide them with information. But to my knowledge and to the staff's knowledge, we provide every request that they've asked for.
And to answer that, I know there's 2 OAI requests on one topic. Both of them differ. I'll do that offline to you if you want to explain.
And that probably answers your first question. The same topic, but they both differ, and they both require different answers. In terms of responding to the we can't assume anything. We can only provide facts. And what we're getting in the last 2 or 3 years is people assuming things. And yes, you're right, we are an honest council. We have independent staff that pick up information, they collate it and send it out. And as you've seen, since the COVID days, we've had untold requests that are coming in from certain individuals, and it's just bogging us down. And we do take a while to get the answers back to them.
With respect, some of these requests I've actually seen the questions from both OAI requests have been sent to us, and they get different responses, that's all, and totally different. So offline I'll come back to you on that one.
Is that all,
Yes,
Councillor?
thank you.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Firstly, Chair, I'd like to thank you and the team for a very good job you're doing with answering these. Must be very frustrating at times. My question related to duplication too, and I realise not all questions are the same. And there's one person wanting to know about any complaints sent to the CE about a member of the council during the months of November and December.
Yes.
And then further down, there's the same request, presumably from a different person, or it may be the same person. Right. I just wondered, is there any reason why we don't publish at least some of these answers on the website? I understand some councils publish some of the responses, albeit redacted, perhaps for privacy reasons.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do publish the list with the topics and that we have responded to. We don't proactively release the answers, because that means that we will have to come to council or to MTO on a monthly basis, and they will have to decide which ones that we will publish, because we can only publish according to the Ombudsman Office if it's in for the greater information of the community. So then we will have to decide what the larger community will be interested in for us to publish on our website.
I looked at the website and we don't have any published. We have the list, but
yes,
not the responses.
Yes, so that was the decision taken by the Audit and Risk Committee about a year and a half ago, that we will publish the list.
Right. My second question is there any reason why the answers to these requests cannot be distributed to councillors?
The Ombudsman is clear, Councillor. The fact that you're a councillor does not entitle you to the information. You are only entitled to the information that you request or that enables you to do your job as a councillor. You're not automatically entitled to all the OIAs.
Right. There's nothing to prevent a councillor asking for copies of OIAs.
You're more than welcome.
So we get round the system that way, which seems a bit onerous. Okay, thanks very much. Oh, the other question was on page 111, there is a link to the requests on the council website.
Yes.
I looked that up and it doesn't take me to the right place. I think that's a mistake.
I will look at that, Councillor. Thank you for noticing.
Thank you.
Councillor Paul.
Thank you, Dave, for your work as well. Wasn't clear to me, do we have any examples where someone has requested information, it's been deemed to be either onerous or time-consuming warranty fee, where in fact they have then come back and paid the fee, or in every instance that people then decline to carry on with their request after being fee put?
For you, Mr. Chair, no, we don't have any examples of people coming back and deciding to pay the fee. Usually they then opted not to go forward with their requests.
So with that, it's a difficult question, given that we have different categories of people, I suppose, from either journalists, professional media, to sovereign citizens, to others. Do you consider that this the fee charging system is actually having its intended effect? I suppose.
I'm sorry.
The fee charging system is forcing the person asking the question to consider whether it's worth their time to continue what might be considered by some to be a vexatious request.
I think what the fee charging system does, it sifts out the people who really want the information, who's just on a fishing expedition. If they really want the information in terms of a legal case or for going forward, they will pay the fee. Where if it's just a nice to have, then they will opt not to pay the fee. But that's just my opinion.
Probably my answer to the question is no, it's not having its effect because we don't charge for the first hour. And it's quite well, three quarters of an hour, so there was no charge. So you don't have to be a person to actually put in a request. There's a big failure in the Official Information Act on councils, public entities, for that reason, that it can involve in an organisation. And if we get to the extent where we have, tens or hundreds coming through, we won't meet this 20-day guideline, and we'll have to actually consider whether we put extra staff on. We've gone back to the Ombudsman and said to them that this is not having, it's not being used, the Act's not being used as intended, it's actually getting in the road of genuine requests, and therefore I have to say no, it's the charging means nothing because of the first hour that we don't charge for.
Just following the response, given that there's a fee requested, people withdrawing their responses, is actually our current policy counterproductive? Are we antagonising these people further? It's a hard one to answer, but I mean, people are withdrawing their requests and then they're going away dissatisfied. Just a question.
I'm sorry, sir, I cannot.
Yeah.
It depends again on what your motivation is to ask the request. You must also remember that the Ombudsman clearly states that there's a certain category of people that we don't charge. We don't charge the media, we don't charge researchers and students. So, yeah, it all depends on what you want to do with the information.
Yeah, certainly I'm not advocating a position, I'm just...
Councillor Ward, then Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Tia, for your work. I know it must be really frustrating. So my question is, how much time is wasted on trying to respond to personal assumptions and misleading and incorrect information?
Well, it all depends on what the questions and how many there are. But I mean, usually if we get a third or a fourth or a sixth request for people who are not happy with our previous response, I would say that takes up the staff's time and responding to deal with responses that they've already dealt with.
So what you're saying is that sometimes your response, because they have a different personal opinion or assumption, you can't satisfy them anyway. Is that correct, Councillor? Thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Yes, I used to spread up there and said you don't charge researchers. So what's the difference in researcher? Is a private individual asks some questions, doing some research on what's happening in the council. So what is the difference?
The researchers that we're referring to, Councillor, is students that's doing their theses at university, or school students, or people doing a study on a certain topic.
Thank you. Any further questions? I've just got a really quick question, if I may, after that. Just wondering, in Laboima, does it provide any reasoning specifically why Waihi Tapu locations are to remain undisclosed? Like the reasoning behind that within the Act?
Sorry, I will have to refer to the big guns on that one.
Do we have any
The rule is to protect the cultural integrity of that particular space so it doesn't get vandalised or damaged in any way.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, can I just point out that the charging policy is on the workshop agenda this afternoon, so for discussion at council.
I did note that earlier when reading through this afternoon. Well, no further questions. There's a motion on the table. Councillor Ward, second. Councillor Williams, would you like to speak?
Tia, I know that you and your girls are doing an amazing job under very trying circumstances, and I applaud you for keeping your cool and for doing the best that you can in a very unusual situation. And I just want you to know that we really, really appreciate everything you and your girls do. So, and I just can't say keep up the good work, because I think it's unnecessary work. I think it's quite disturbing. Thank you.
Councillor.
Yeah, thank you for doing those reports. As a councillor, I actually do pick up on subjects, even though it's minute in the end, think, oh, what's happening down there? And so I think it's actually a very good report to give to council so we pick up on knowledge. I think it's actually important for our ratepayers, if they need to ask anything, for us to do that, because as the CE said, we're not a dishonest council, we're an honest council, we're meant to be an open council and what have you. So I think we've got to be open on everything as we should be expected on these. So I actually think this is a real good thing. And thank you for your other comments saying if we want to know, because I've just emailed you to get all the information from the answers, because I believe this actually helps councillors follow up as maybe what's not going right with council, or maybe it ain't going really good on some things, so it keeps us informed as well. So I think it's a very good thing for us to have available to us. Thank you.
Further speakers? Councillor Fulton.
Yes, my observation here would be, I think it's important that in the course of responding to this growing number of questions, including what I would deem to be vexatious questions, that it's not to the detriment of people like researchers, journalists, academics, people wanting information about their properties. What we used to call day-to-day routine questions. I'm just worried that currently the response times are being marginalised because you're having to deal with these other groups. So I don't know what the answer to that is, but I know that you've got a lot on your plate and you've got so I can be here for your work. Thank you.
Any further speakers? Don't believe there's anything to reply to. So we'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, and we'll duck back to portfolio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Right, the next one is from Marie, and dog registration notices were sent to email recipients a couple of weeks ago and posted in the mail last week. This is the second year of the multi-year tag, and so far very few replacement tags have been issued, so that's really good. The fourth instalment of rates are due on the 20th of May. At the 31st of May, rates collection was at 94.11% compared to 94.22% at the same time last year. With a month to go in the financial year, this figure will increase by the 30th of June. The government rates rebate is going up from $570 to $590 next year. Next week, letters will be sent to this year's rates rebate recipients, inviting them to make a rates rebate appointment for the new financial year. LIM numbers are remaining steady, with over 200 more LIMs being issued so far in 2024 than at the same time last year. The contact teams have had training on the new Datascape service request system, which is planned to go live on the 1st of July. Time is being allocated over the next few weeks for practice and further training sessions. So that's from Marie, and then we have one from Greg.
Paul has a question for you, Jane.
Okay, sorry.
Just a question on the dog tags. Have you had any feedback on the quality of the tags? There's been a lot of people talking about the writing's been going off them, and I go to the dog park quite often over my place and talk to a few people. I see that there's no replacements of them, but people are actually throwing them away because they're not working and just not having tags on dogs. So, has that come to the council's attention?
I don't think so. I think, I've got Bo's had his on for 2 years, absolutely still the same as it was. So I just think that's obviously not correct. And the fact that the registrations posted in the mail last week. And this is the second year of the multi-year tag, and so far very few replacement tags are being issued. If people feel that the numbers are being rubbed off for any reason, surely they'll be asking for new tags. And I see the tag on Bow is just as good as new after 2 years, so I can't see a problem there.
You might not get to see a problem, but on social media there is, so could we have a...
Or maybe you could tell us, maybe you could show us the social media.
I'll follow up with Billy to see if he's...
That would be good, because I'm getting quite aware, and there has been social media posts with councils on these type of things. I'm just wondering whether people are actually following up on these dog tags and
I'll follow up with Billy.
They've only been progress for 12 months as well, so...
Right. And financial report, long-term plan. Following the deliberation on the 21st of May, staff have been busy updating both the financial model and the long-term plan documents to reflect the decisions made. Well, New Zealand started the audit of the final long-term plan on the 27th of May and were on site last week. The focus is on checking that the financial impact of the decision made by the Council have been fairly reflected in the financial forecast. They are also checking that the assumptions that underpin the long-term plan remain sound, and that we have met all the legislative requirements in relation to the content of the final document. The annual report, once the long-term plan is finalised, finance staff will turn their attention to the annual report 23-24. Work is already underway in relation to the revaluation of infrastructure and building assets to make sure that they are held on our balance sheet at fair value. Higher inflation in recent years has meant that valuations have been required more regularly than in the past. As has been indicated in the audit plan, we are expected to prepare draft financial statements for audit by the 19th of August. This is a tight deadline and will require significant effort by the finance team, but make us well placed to complete the annual report in good time to meet our statutory deadline. Treasury Management staff have met with Bancorp recently to discuss our approach to the borrowing that matures in August and October this year, as well as plan our risk management hedging cover for new borrowing anticipated over the coming year to fund capital projects. This is to make sure we comply with our Treasury policy and reduce the risks associated with changes in interest rates. So that is Greg's report. Thank you very much.
Mr. Moore.
Yeah, just the rates rebate. I'm not sure the figure there is sent to you, Councillor Ward, but I think it's 750 at the moment. It may be going to 790.
Oh, right, it must have been a type zero. Thank you for that.
Councillor Fulton.
Thank you, Mr. Slightly backpedaling on the LTP, I just didn't quite get in there when we were talking about communications. A question about when we did our LTP communications and these documents were laid out on tables with our 4 themes, was it? I had a lot of feedback, say, from Oxford and Mahoka. People sort of said, where's my stuff? Where's our issues? You know, like people wanted to sort of get into the nuts and bolts of those issues, and all I could see is sort of these broad themes. And I just wonder whether there's a way that we can sort of change the genericness of these presentations and communications, so that people can actually really genuinely get engaged with the material when they go to these meetings. You see what I mean? People want to talk about what's happening to the Oxford sewage or something.
That's a fairly chunky question you asked.
Yeah, I might know that.
I'll just make a general comment. Clearly, the LTP is covering the organisation as a whole, and generally it's the big dollar numbers that come to the top, and those are what are the key consultation issues. It is possible within a long-term plan, though, to have, say, a ward-based page or two, which is what's happening in those wards. It's something we could look at. We're currently doing a review of the long-term planning process, so I'll feed that into the review, because I think it's a valid point. People do want to know what's happening in their local area.
Yeah, and it just might be a trigger for conversation and discussions. I found myself getting into these localised discussions about local things.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Following on from the rates rebate, is there any feedback provided to the Crown or to the government with regard to the actual amount of the rebate and whether or not it's actually sufficient? Do we have that opportunity to actually give feedback? And what is currently the percentage of our ratepayers that are currently applying for the rates rebate? Is it still sitting around about the 9%? Thank you.
I don't think we have the opportunity to give much feedback on the rates rebate. It's a calculation that's essentially done by DIAs. I'm not sure, I haven't worked out what the $40, I think it's $40, but I haven't seen the number yet, so it's definitely $750 at the moment. Percentage is still around the 9 to 10% of our ratepayers. It's about, I think it was about 2,200 last year. And it varies from, a couple of dollars up to full rebate, so yeah, that's about as much as I can answer at this stage, but we'll confirm what the actual rebate comes in. I heard it was indicative at this stage. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor.
If I could just follow on from that, Chief, do we get reimbursed for the rebate, or is it a cost we bear?
Yes, it is. We do all the administration for it, and then we apply for the rebate involved we paid across. So generally, they can apply any time through the year, but most of them, our ratepayers come in the first 3 months of the year once our rates invoice goes out.
Any further questions? I'll just have one sneaky one before you get off the hook. With regards to going back to your report regarding the amount of people who have paid in full, well, have paid up to date, so the 94%. Have we compared that to pre-COVID levels, just out of interest?
I know that was just compared to last year, but I'm sure that if we asked, I would say that that's probably normal. I think it's pretty good. But what do you think? Really?
Yeah, I think it's a continuing trend. I think the good news is that given the economic climate, that the collection hasn't fallen away this year, and so it's a positive number.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Councillor Ward. Right, we'll move on to any questions, understanding rules? There appear to be none. Urgent general business? It's nothing to my mind. Right. Move on to 9 matters to be considered publicly excluded. I'll move a motion that we move into publicly excluded for the reasons stated. Councillor Ward, you have to second. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. We'll just wait for the blinds to go down.
He didn't know.
Thank you.
He's on the other side of the door.
Right, so this should be fairly non-controversial, confirming the minutes of the previously public excluded. Councillor Williams, happy to move. Do I have a seconder? I'm happy to second from the chair. I'm second. Yeah. Would you like to speak to the motion? Okay. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those against? Carried.
I'm going to go back into public.
I'll second that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried.
Can you please put the blinds up?
Mr. Chair, what was the recommendation about the business?
The business.
Does it remain public excluded?
I'll just
Or the resolution be made public?
I believe it was to remain publicly excluded.
I think it would need to be with what it's about.
Yes, remains. Right, we might need to amend that. Essentially, it's not explicitly stated.
It's excluded, it's based on what was in the minutes.
Yeah.
So it's whatever's in the minutes of the previous meeting.
Are we all comfortable with that? Righto. Thank you all for your attendance and go well. Meeting concluded at 11:21.